Once upon a time in a palace, Nymphenburg Palace, a prince was born. He was the eldest son of Maximilian II of Bavaria, and he was named Ludwig Otto Frederick William. From a young age, Ludwig was urged by his parents to pursue an education, which led to Ludwig spending all of his time studying and exercising to help keep up the royal appearance. This may or may not be to blame for his later behaviors. He spent much of his time at the castle of Hohenschwangau, which was a small fantasy castle his father built near Apsey. He became close friends with his aide-de-camp, Prince Paul, and together they would act out plays, many of which were created by an author named Richard Wagner, as well as read poetry and ride horses together. Ludwig was crowned king at the age of 19. Though he had been preparing for this all his life, he wasn't ready to be king. His interest instead lied in music, art, and architecture. After Ludwig came to power in 1864, he finally met his idol. He praised him and even gave him gifts. Wagner moved to Bavaria with the help of Ludwig. With the two nearby, they would often spend many days together and work on projects together. Without Ludwig's support, it's unlikely that Wagner's operas and plays would have succeeded for as long as they did. Ludwig financially supported many of Wagner's projects, such as loaning him money to build an opera house, a villa for his family to live in, and funding several plays. Ludwig sits now, writing a letter to an architect his family knew. His grandfather, having recently died, left his vast sums of money to Ludwig. Ludwig had long loved the art and heroics of the Middle Ages, and the art he had admired for so long streamed through his mind. Creativity began to flow as he envisioned a grand castle lined with artwork that sat atop a hill. The letter was swiftly sent off to the architect. The man then arrived at Ludwig's home as fast as his carriage could take him. With parchment and ink by the ton, the men put their heads together. The architect is forced to shut down many grand ideas proposed by Ludwig, too grand for the structure to hold. A flurry of papers and ink results in the design of a large castle, with towers and gates worth the likes of King Arthur. An absurd amount of money allocated towards its construction. As construction continued, Ludwig added more and more to the design, wishing to impress his crush. He added more towers, made the architecture more extravagant, and put a cathedral in the center, inspired by the operas he so adored. But the more he added, the more expensive the castle became, and Ludwig started to run out of money. He took out credit and did favors, but it only helped so much. Eventually, his government grew tired of his reckless spending and deposed him. Otto's desire to be king was far from secret. It was something that he had wanted for many years. He had no interest in his brother Ludwig being king at all. In the afternoon, on June 13, 1886, Ludwig II disappeared while out for a walk with his physician, Dr. Guden, and their corpses were discovered a few hours later. At the age of 40, Ludwig's lifeless body was found floating in Lake Starnberg, south of Munich, with the corpse of his physician. It was an awful sight to see. Blood was strained from both of them. Their skin was pale and dry. His nail beds were a purplish color and thin from the water. The bodies were stiff and lifeless. His death as a mystery and was a dreadful sight to see. His death was later declared a suicide by drowning, but there were later reports that no water was found in his lungs, and there were also no other marks found on his body that would indicate foul play. Since Otto had such a strong desire to be king and was willing to do anything for that position, it's believed that he murdered Ludwig, since it was rather unusual that Ludwig and his physician both somehow mysteriously fell in a lake together. This was sadly the end of the fairy tale king.